Chapter 3775. In that case, won't Hong Zhuang have to stay on Penglai Island in the future? Mu Lingbing frowned. She thought that Bailey Hong Zhuang and the rest would be back soon, but if Beichen was from Penglai Island, Hong Zhuang wouldn't be separated from Beichen. It seemed that it would be very difficult for them to see Hong Zhuang again in the future. Hong Zhuang and I finally got to know each other. We haven't been together for long, and now we're going to lose sight of each other again. Mu Lingbing was depressed. She only wanted her family to be reunited and live a good life together, but it seemed that it wouldn't be easy to achieve that. Lan Yunxiao couldn't help but pat Mu Lingbing's shoulder when he saw her depressed appearance. He understood that after all these years, Mu Lingbing had already seen through many things. Her greatest wish was for her family to be reunited. Lingbing, Hong Zhuang, and Beichen have their own paths to walk. They're still young, so they naturally want to reach higher realms. As their parents, we should give them the space to do so. Just as Mother said, if we miss them, we could go to Penglai Island to see them. Although the journey is a bit far, it'll just take a bit more time. Besides, don't Beichen and the rest hope that we can go to Penglai Island with them? After I've settled the Lan family's matters, I'll go with you to see them. How about it? Mu Lingbing fell silent for a moment before nodding. You're right. They're still very young, so their thoughts are naturally different from ours. I can't force my own thoughts on them. Right now, I'm most worried that young Master D's family isn't simple. I don't know if Hong Zhuang will be bullied there. Lan Yunxiao's brows revealed his worry. As a member of an aristocratic family, he was very familiar with such matters. With Hong Zhuang's status, no one in the outside world could compare to her. However, on Penglai Island, her status wasn't that important. He only had one daughter, and he couldn't bear to see Hong Zhuang being wronged. It can't be. Mu Lingbing's eyes narrowed. If they dare to bully Hong Zhuang, you don't have to worry. Mu Jin's faintly smiled. Situ's worries are the same as Yun Zhao's, so he had already probed young Master D before this. He said that he was very satisfied with this marriage, so the matter you are thinking of shouldn't happen. What's more, with Beichen's feelings for Hong Zhuang, he wouldn't be willing to let Hong Zhuang suffer. That's true. The curve of Lan Yunxiao's lips softened. Back then, he had seen Di Beichen's deep affection for Hong Zhuang. That was why he was assured to hand Hong Zhuang over to him. He believed that Beichen wouldn't let Hong Zhuang down. In the following days, Di Yujue wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, he toured many places under Lan Yunxiao's guidance. At the same time, he gained a better understanding of Di Beichen. Now that he knew who his biological son was, he wasn't in a hurry. After all, he had waited for so many years, so he didn't mind waiting for a few more days. Today, Di Yujue stood in front of Situ Yin and the others and cupped his hands. Thank you for your hospitality these past few days. I should return to Penglai Island. Chapter 3776. Little Brother Lan, I've already stayed here for several days. It's time for me to go back. Di Yujue's face was brimming with a smile. His originally handsome face was now as elegant as a spring breeze. I finally found Beichen's whereabouts with great difficulty. I also want to reunite with him as soon as possible. Lan Yunxiao originally wanted to urge him to stay, but after hearing Di Yujue's words, he gave up on that idea. He could understand Di Yujue's feelings. He was definitely impatient. To be able to stay here for several days, he must have reached Di Yujue's limit. After all, in Di Yujue's heart, there was nothing more important than reuniting with his son. Since that's the case, then I won't urge Brother D to stay. If Brother D has time in the future, come visit us again. At that time, you should stay for a few more days. Haha, that's only natural. Di Yujue laughed brightly. Little Brother Lan, if you have time in the future, you must come to Penglai Island to take a look. I will definitely be a good host. All right, if there's a chance, we'll definitely come. Then I'll be waiting for you at Penglai Island. Di Yujue's face was full of smiles. After only a few days of interaction, he knew that Lan Yunxiao and the rest were all kind people. Beichen had lived with them for all these years, so he definitely hadn't been mistreated. At the same time, he was even more grateful to Situ Yin and the rest for taking care of Di Beichen for him. In the next second, a universe pouch appeared in Di Yujue's hand. Little brother Lon, there are some spirit stones and cultivation resources in this universe pouch. You've taken care of Beichin for so many years. As Beichin's father, I have nothing to repay you with. I can only remember your kindness in my heart. These things are just a small token of my sincerity. Lon Yunxiao hastily waved his hand. Brother D, taking care of Beichin is what we should do. Moreover, Beichin treats us very well. He doesn't need these things. Situ Yin had long regarded Di Beichin as his own grandson, and Di Beichin was also their son-in-law. They should treat Beichin well, so there was no need to thank him. Brother Lon, I know you're all kind-hearted people. From the moment you adopted Beichin, you didn't think of anything in return. But as Beichin's father, my gratitude to you can't be described with words. No matter what, I have to do something. Although these things can't be compared to the kindness you've shown me, I'm sure you'd do the same if you were in my shoes. Lon Yunxiao was silent for a moment. He could understand Di Yujue's feelings. On one hand, he was grateful to them. On the other hand, he owed Di Beichin. If he didn't do anything, he wouldn't feel good in his heart. Since Brother D says so, I won't refuse. A smile appeared on Di Yujue's face. That's the right thing to do. After receiving Di Yujue's universe pouch, Lon Yunxiao said, Brother D, take care of yourself. Di Yujue nodded. Brother D, if you need my help in the future, don't hesitate to ask. As long as it's something I can do, I won't refuse. Okay, remember to come to Penglai Island when you have time. I'll introduce you to other people. We'll definitely go. Take care. Di Yujue began his journey back to Penglai Island. Compared to the nervousness he felt when he came to the outside world, Di Yujue was extremely happy and his steps were light. Chapter 3777. Mo Yunjue originally didn't need to stay in the Demon Training Tower after completing the challenge. However, he wanted to stay here and wait for the opportunity to reunite with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Now that he had successfully reunited with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, he could peacefully cultivate in the cultivation area. The 6-people team was immediately divided into 2 small teams. Mo Yunjue and Ao Lingxiao cultivated in the cultivation area all day long. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others cultivated in the arena area. According to Mo Yunjue's description, it would be beneficial for them to accumulate more killing intent before breaking through the challenge. Therefore, everyone spent most of their time in the arena. The Demon Training Tower's inheritance was a very good opportunity for them to increase their cultivation. They couldn't easily let it go. As long as they could obtain the inheritance, their cultivation would be able to increase by several levels. It would undoubtedly be of great help. Ever since they knew that Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were friends, the Penglai Island's cultivators looked at them differently. Sure enough, abnormal friends were also abnormal. These people were all young, but none of them were simple. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' performance in the arena became more and more fierce, many cultivators didn't want to fight with them anymore. They didn't want to participate in a battle where they were bound to lose. If they were injured or even died because of it, wouldn't it be a pity to lose the killing intent that they had accumulated with great difficulty? After noticing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but change their strategy. After that, they restrained their attacks a little. They only wanted to learn from each other and didn't want to kill. In addition to their arrogant provocation, the number of cultivators who came to fight with them increased. Most of the cultivators here were conceited. When they heard someone mocking them for being cowards, they naturally couldn't accept it. Moreover, although Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were strong, their attacks weren't very ruthless. Since there was no danger to their lives, everyone didn't mind learning from each other. In this way, it would be beneficial for their strength to increase. Time passed quietly in this process. With the continuous battle, the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others improved again. High-intensity battles were the most helpful for cultivators to improve their strength, so their speed of improvement was also very fast. In addition, Everyone's fighting style was different, so fighting with different people could enrich their fighting experience. Among the four of them, Bewitching's cultivation had improved the most. In the past, Bewitching had been suppressed by the cursed physique, so his cultivation had been unable to increase. Now that he had transformed into the physique of Heaven's will, the previous suppression seemed to have erupted. The speed of his improvement left Xiren in the dust. For this point, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was also very emotional. If it weren't for the fact that her cultivation method was heaven-defying, she definitely wouldn't be able to keep up with Bewitching's footsteps. Fortunately, her demon summoning scripture was very special. As she cultivated, there were some signs of evolution. This was something that she had just discovered. It was because of this that she was able to keep up with Bewitching's footsteps and not be left behind. Even so, Bewitching's cultivation speed was still faster than her. This was the terrifying part of the physique of Heaven's will. In the past, the suppression was for the sake of the later stage. Once it changed, it would be a true cultivation genius. Chapter 3778. When Xiren was a little helpless. Bewitching's cultivation was one level higher than his. He wanted to catch up, but according to the current situation, not being left further and further behind was his greatest hope. Haven't I been cultivating with you all day? Don't tell me you don't know how I cultivate? Bewitching said with a faint smile. Xiren sighed. It's precisely because I watch you cultivate that I feel unbalanced in my heart. Clearly, my cultivation time is not shorter than yours, but your cultivation speed is so much faster than mine. It's really infuriating to compare yourself to others. Xiren, you should get used to it as soon as possible. Shangguan Ying's face rippled with a faint smile. In the past, you and Beichen's cultivation speed were about the same, but Beichen was under the suppression of the cursed body. Now that Beichen's cursed body has been broken, it's normal that you can't catch up. However, if you don't compare yourself to Beichen, your cultivation speed is still very fast. Ying, you're finally comforting me. Xiren looked at Shangguan Ying emotionally. You're right, it's better if I don't compare myself to this abnormal person. His talent is higher than mine, and with his physique that is naturally suitable for cultivation, I can't change my fate of being second place forever. Fortunately, I'm open-minded. Good luck. Once you obtain the inheritance of the Devil Training Pagoda, the situation will be different. A bright light appeared in Beichen's deep eyes. Now, he also urgently wanted to increase his strength. The experts in the Penglai Palace were as numerous as the clouds. Chu Yinyao alone was already a headache for them, and with Chu Yinyao's sister, if they did not increase their cultivation before returning, they would have a headache dealing with them. Moreover, the skeletons in the training ground were not simple. Only by becoming stronger could they be safe and sound. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Ying went to the arena area, Xiren said, Beichen, you've been cultivating especially hard recently. Is Mo Yunjue's appearance pressuring you? Beichen glanced at Xiren indifferently and did not say anything. I don't know what's going on. This kid's cultivation actually increased so quickly. It's really shocking. His cultivation talent has always been very strong, not much different from yours. However, although your cultivation speed was suppressed by the cursed body, you didn't fall behind by much. Speaking of which, it's his cultivation speed that has suddenly increased. Xiren understood in his heart that Mo Yunjue's relationship with them was very friendly. However, no matter what, he still did not let go of his feelings for Bailey Hongzhuang. Although Beichen appeared to be extremely free and easy, men were still stingy in this kind of matter. It was not that simple to make him not care. If I'm not wrong, the reason why his cultivation can increase so quickly should be because he passed the trial of the Heavenly Slaughter Tower. Trial? Xiren was slightly stunned and frowned. He had some doubts in his heart, but he quickly understood what Beichen was talking about. He could not help but open his eyes wide. Are you talking about the terrifying trial of the Heavenly Slaughter Tower? Beichen nodded. That's right. Chapter 3779. Listening to Xiren's words, Beichen only glanced at him, but he closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. Looking at Deep Beichun like this, Xiren thought for a moment and understood. Thinking about it, this was where Di Beichun's pressure came from. Mo Yunjue had always appeared to be very free and easy, but from his actions, it was likely that he was only acting free and easy. In fact, it was not easy for him to completely let go of this matter. He also had some sympathy for Mo Yunjue. Who would have thought that the always cold and ruthless young master Shirtian Tower was actually a romantic? On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation finally successfully broke through to the 7th level of the Purple Realm. At the same time, Di Beichun's cultivation also broke through to the 8th level of the Purple Realm. Her beautiful and refined face was filled with a happy smile. Bailey Hongzhuang felt a burst of joy in her heart. Beichun, you broke through again. Di Beichun smiled and nodded, his pair of narrow eyes curved into a charming arc. Wife, you also broke through. Sparring every day and using spirit stones to cultivate at night in this cultivation area, the progress is really extraordinary, much faster than usual. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes curved. The cultivation area's spirit energy was already very rich, and with the supply of spirit stones, the speed of cultivation was naturally faster than before. Now, they also understood why the 5th level of the Purple Realm cultivators all ran to Penglai Island. If it was in the outside world, after a cultivator reached this level, the speed of cultivation would be extremely slow if they wanted to increase their cultivation. After all, they could only cultivate spirit energy from the air. Judging from the huge amount of spirit energy needed to break through to the Purple Realm, it would definitely take a long time. However, the spirit stones were very rich in spirit energy. Using spirit stones to cultivate was much faster than absorbing spirit energy from the air. If they stayed in the outside world, let alone the 7th level of the Purple Realm, they might not even be able to break through to the 4th level of the Purple Realm. We have accumulated a lot of killing intent. If there are no problems, we can go to the checkpoint area, Di Beichun said. In terms of strength, their strength was naturally not top-notch. However, the Demon Refining Tower Challenge Area was similar to the Blood Refining Tower Challenge Area. The difficulty of the challenge was related to the strength of the cultivator. The stronger the cultivator, the higher the difficulty of the challenge area. The weaker the cultivator, the lower the difficulty. In short, it was set according to the limit of each cultivator. Therefore, no matter when he went to challenge it, the effect was the same. The reason why they had been waiting was to accumulate enough killing intent before going. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, okay. They had spent a lot of time trying to pass the trial. Now it was time to give it a try. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying had broken through, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying rushed over, they sensed the two's aura and found that it had indeed increased compared to before. Deep Beichun, Hongzhuang, congratulations on successfully breaking through. Shangguan Yingying congratulated with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. I see that your aura has also increased. You should be close to breaking through, right? Shangguan Yingying nodded slightly. Cultivating in the cultivation area. The cultivation speed is very fast. We're slightly slower than you, but we should be able to break through in a few days. That's good. Deep Beichun smiled. Hongzhuang and I are going to the checkpoint area. You're going to the checkpoint now? Xiren asked in surprise. Chapter 3780. You're right. With his cultivation and killing intent, it should be enough. Xiren nodded. Beichun, Hongzhuang, you have to work hard and succeed. Shangguan Yingying's eyes were filled with anticipation. If you succeed, then your cultivation will increase greatly. You two have already succeeded in obtaining the inheritance of the Blood Refining Tower. I believe that the inheritance of the Demon Refining Tower won't be a problem for you. Xiren's eyes were filled with determination. He believed that with Deep Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang's level of excellence, they would definitely be able to obtain the inheritance of the Demon Refining Tower. Mo Yunjue's cultivation talent had always been on par with Di Beichun's. Since Mo Yunjue could succeed, then presumably Di Beichun wouldn't fail either. Not long after, Ao Lingxiao and Mo Yunjue also came over. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were preparing to attempt the trial, they were also very much in agreement. Beichun, Hongzhuang, everyone might encounter different situations when attempting the trial, but I feel that the most important thing is to advance courageously and fearlessly. Advance courageously and fearlessly. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and muttered. Mo Yunjue nodded. That's right. This killing intent field gathers killing intent and cultivates a killing heart. If you stop because of fear, then I'm afraid it will be very difficult to succeed. Understand. Bailey Hongzhuang replied. Mo Yunjue's analysis was very reasonable. However, the specific situation would only be known after they entered the trial area. Beichun, you guys go ahead first. Ying and I will go into seclusion for a few days. After we break through, then we will attempt the trial. Okay. Di Beichun nodded. I'll go with Hongzhuang first. If I have any insights, I can share them with you. After making the decision, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun didn't delay any longer and went straight to the trial area. Compared to the arena area and the cultivation area, the number of cultivators in the challenge area was undoubtedly much lower. If it was a normal day, there would be very few cultivators who would come to the challenge area. However, ever since the news of Mo Yunjue obtaining the Devil Training Tower's inheritance spread, many cultivators became more confident and came to the challenge area to try their luck. If they were lucky, they might be able to obtain the inheritance, and from then on, they would be able to achieve a meteoric rise. Therefore, during that period of time, the trial area was bustling with noise. Many cultivators gathered here, all of them thinking that they were extraordinary and only felt that they were the next genius to succeed. However, after such a long time, there was still no other cultivator who had obtained the inheritance. Only then did everyone truly believe that Mo Yunjue was able to obtain the Devil Training Tower's inheritance because of his own outstanding talent, and not because of good luck. Right now, the number of cultivators in the trial area is a lot less. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around, the corners of her lips hooked up in a smile. Di Beichun nodded. If it was still as grand as before, I'm afraid that we would have to queue up here. Haha, that's true. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Unknowingly, we have stayed in the Devil Training Tower for another 2 months. If we succeed, we can return to Penglai Island. Standing in front of the challenge room, Di Beichun stared at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Wife, do your best. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head, her eyes filled with confidence. Okay. Chapter 3781. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked into the challenge area together. When the surrounding cultivators saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Zilong had also started to challenge the challenge area, their eyes flashed with a strange light. After the black-clothed man started to challenge the challenge area, Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Zilong also started to challenge the challenge area. Their performance in the challenge area was not any worse than the black-clothed man's. Do you think they will also succeed in obtaining the inheritance? What kind of joke is this? Do you think the inheritance is so easy to obtain? The black-clothed man was already lucky to be able to obtain the inheritance. If the two of them can also obtain it, unless they have a way to challenge the challenge area, it's impossible. That's true. In the past 100 years, only the black-clothed man has succeeded in the Demon Training Tower. This is already very impressive. It's impossible for anyone else to succeed. Everyone shook their heads. They only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were simply indulging in fantasy. It was already impossible for them to succeed. Just wait. When they come out after failing the challenge area, their faces will definitely be covered in dirt. As the door closed, Bailey Hongzhuang finally saw the scene in the challenge area. She saw that she was in an empty room. The dim light made everything around her a little blurry. It was clearly daytime, but it looked as if it was night. Bailey Hongzhuang vigilantly observed everything around her. She did not dare to relax in the slightest. She knew how terrifying the challenge area was. Perhaps when she relaxed, the attack would quietly come and you would not be able to defend against it. However, Bailey Hongzhuang carefully walked around the entire room and did not find anything. She could not help but frown. Her eyes flashed with an incomprehensible light. What's going on? Why is there nothing in here? Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with doubts. Since there was nothing, what kind of test was this? Could it be that she had to stay in this empty room forever? Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were all paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. However, as soon as they walked through the door, they realized that a powerful force had imprisoned them, causing them to be unable to communicate with Bailey Hongzhuang at all. The Chaos Ring was a divine weapon. Up until now, the various functions it had displayed had amazed them. However, it had been restrained here. How could they not be surprised? This demon training tower is indeed an extraordinary place. We can't communicate with Master. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with a look of disbelief. Her voice was full of lamentation. From what I can see, there's something strange about this challenge area. Not only is it narrow, it's also very dim. The strangest thing is that Master has been sitting on the same spot without moving since she entered. Fortunately, no one attacked Master. Otherwise, the situation would be terrible, Bai Shi slowly said. Xiao Bai's gaze fell upon Bailey Hongzhuang. Gradually, it could not help but frown. Look, Master has been frowning. There's also a look of confusion on her face. Why is that? Hearing Xiao Bai's words, Xiao He and Bai Shi immediately paid close attention. With one look, they realized that the situation was a little strange. I don't know. Could it be that this test is not about martial strength, but the mind? Bai Shi suddenly asked. Chapter 3782. Bailey Hongzhuang walked around the room a few times and shouted for a while. However, there was still no response. She could not help but frown. This seemed to be an empty room. If she was not so sure that she had walked into the challenge room, she would have suspected that she had walked into the wrong room and arrived at an empty room. Since she could not figure out what the test was, Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry. She simply sat on the ground and wanted to see what the test was about. She believed that there must be a reason why the test was set up this way. She just had to wait quietly, and she would find out sooner or later. After all, in the process of the test, once she left, she would fail the test. Hence, she had no way out. Time passed quietly as she waited. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that there was no movement, she simply closed her eyes and began to cultivate. However, in the process of cultivation, she was still vigilant of her surroundings. As long as there was an attack, she would be the first to react. However, as time passed, there was not the slightest bit of an attack. This place was like an empty room with no special meaning. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang felt very helpless. She was completely unaware of the test's routine. According to what Mo Yunjue had told her, the content of this test was completely different from hers. It is indeed a mysterious challenge room. This is the reason why so few people have been able to obtain the inheritance for so many years. Because every cultivator encounters different situations. If the content of the test is the same, then everyone can think of a way to overcome it based on the content of the test. Then, the number of successful cultivators will increase greatly. I'm afraid that all the heirs of the major forces will be able to obtain it. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. Since I can't figure out the routine, I can only wait here. I'll cultivate well first. I don't believe that this test will keep me here forever. Day after day passed. Bailey Hongzhuang had been meditating in seclusion on the spot, absorbing the elemental energy in the air. She was pleasantly surprised to find that the elemental energy in the trial area was very rich. She had been using spirit stones to cultivate, and the rich elemental energy in the air had the same effect as if she was cultivating in the cultivation area. Her own cultivation was also gradually increasing through this cultivation process. In the beginning, Bailey Hongzhuang was still able to endure and cultivate here day after day. However, as time passed, she could not help but feel anxious. I'm afraid I've already been here for several months, but there hasn't been any movement. Could it be that I have to stay here forever? Although the essence energy here is very dense and very suitable for my cultivation, I still have many things to do. I can't always stay here, not to mention that Beichun and the rest are still waiting for me. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face couldn't help but be filled with anxiety. She exited her cultivation state, stood up, and shouted into the room, "If there's any assessment, just start it. What's the meaning of trapping me here?" However, there was still no sound coming from the empty room. It was as if there was only Bailey Hongzhuang here. Bailey Hongzhuang shouted for a while, but after realizing that there was no use, the helplessness in her heart grew stronger. Chapter 3783. What kind of test is this? Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. In the end, she helplessly sat down and continued to cultivate. She didn't know how much time had passed since she started cultivating. In the beginning, Bailey Hongzhuang was counting the number of days she had spent in this room. Later on, she couldn't even tell how long she had been in this room, so she simply stopped caring. During this period of time, she had thought of giving up and walking out of this room. However, every time she was about to open the door, she would fall into hesitation. She didn't want to admit defeat like this. She could fail, but she didn't want to fail so muddle-headedly. Until now, she still didn't know what she was doing here. She also didn't know where she had failed, so she didn't want to leave. Thus, she finally returned to her original spot. The only thing that was worth being happy about was that Bailey Hongzhuang felt that her demonic calling scripture had signs of evolution, but that was just the beginning of the evolution. As she cultivated wholeheartedly during this time, the speed of the demonic calling scripture-esque evolution was greatly accelerated. She could feel that after the demon summoning scripture had evolved, her cultivation speed had increased by a few notches. It seemed like it had only increased by a few notches, but it was enough to make Bailey Hongzhuang feel unusually happy. At this late stage of cultivation, it would take a long time to improve. Even if it was only a few notches faster, it would save a lot of time. Beichun had the heavenly mandate constitution, so it was much easier for him to cultivate. His cultivation speed was also greatly increased. In the long run, her cultivation would definitely not be able to keep up with Beichun's pace. However, the improvement of the demon summoning scripture had undoubtedly given her a chance to keep up with Beichun. When I first started cultivating the demon summoning scripture, I already knew how powerful it was. In the entire Shangxian continent, there are probably no more than 5 techniques that could be called heaven-defying. Before, I only felt that the cultivation speed was very fast, but I didn't think that it was too powerful. I just didn't think that the demon summoning scripture could evolve. It's really amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed in her heart. As the head of the Bailey family in her previous life, she had seen all sorts of good things. However, this was the first time she had encountered a skill that could evolve. This technique is called the demon summoning scripture. With such a strange name, it should be used for summoning. But what does this demon refer to? I've been cultivating it for so long, but I still haven't discovered its specific use. Bailey Hongzhuang had always had some doubts about this. She had thought about this point before, but after studying it for a long time, she still couldn't understand the reason why this cultivation method was named this way. She didn't know if she would be able to understand it after this cultivation method evolved. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly. I don't know how long this weird assessment will keep me here. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang's helplessness, the 3 beasties were also confused. Master is usually very calm. Why has she been mumbling to herself ever since she entered this room? Xiaohei raised her eyebrows, her eyes filled with confusion. It had been with its master for so long, so it understood her personality very well. Generally speaking, its master's personality was more stable and wouldn't be so impatient. Chapter 3784. Xiaobai nodded. My thoughts are the same as yours. Judging from Master's behavior, she seems to think that she has been in this room for a very long time. A test of endurance? Xiaohei frowned. Then this test isn't that dangerous. Although this test isn't dangerous, it's very torturous. Bai Shi's expression was not optimistic. Most importantly, we don't know how long this test will take. A long wait was something that most people could not accept. Furthermore, Bailey Hongzhuang had no idea what she was doing ever since she had entered this place. It was not easy for her to wait patiently. It was not just Bailey Hongzhuang. Bai Shi believed that most cultivators would not be able to hold themselves back. I finally understand why there are so few inheritors of the Demon Training Tower. This test is just too perverse. I'm afraid that many cultivators would not be able to take this first test and would just walk out of the room. Everyone had come here to challenge this test for the sake of increasing their cultivation so that they could live a more carefree life in the future. No one will want to spend all their time in this empty room. This point alone was enough to cause most cultivators to fail. Then what should we do? Xiao He finally understood the difficulty of this test. We can't even warn Master. We can only watch from here. Xiao Bai shrugged. There's no other way. We can only hope that Master understands this herself. However, Master is now in an illusion. It's just too difficult for her to understand this. The three beasts shook their heads and sighed. They felt that this test was just too perverse. Those involved could not see clearly while those on the sidelines could not see clearly. It was just too difficult for those involved to see clearly. Bailey Hongzhuang spent her days in cultivation. Gradually, she did not pay much attention to the passage of time. Since she was here, she would take things as they came. She could not remember how long she had been here. She only felt that she had been here for a very long time. She focused all her attention on her cultivation. During this process, her demon summoning scripture had successfully evolved. After the complete evolution of the demon summoning scripture, the speed of cultivation had greatly increased. Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was also steadily increasing in the process of cultivation. Now that she had completely calmed down, she was less anxious. She was no longer in a hurry to leave, nor was she in a hurry to improve her cultivation. When everything calmed down, she felt completely different from before. Sometimes, it was a good thing to stop for a while. Perhaps there was no need to be so impatient. Ever since she found out her true identity in Feng Bo country, she had always felt an indescribable sense of urgency. She did her best to raise her cultivation, not daring to relax even a little bit, so that she could save her parents as soon as possible. This was because if she was just a step late, her parents might be in an uncontrollable danger. Therefore, she had to make every second count and not slack off. During this process, she was also exhausted, but she had never said it out loud. Originally, after saving her parents and punishing the Yu clan, she could finally relax. However, Di Beichen's cursed body made her unable to relax even a little bit. They did their best to raise their cultivation in order to successfully enter Penglai Island. Otherwise, Di Beichen's life would be in danger. Chapter 3785. In life, sometimes it's not a bad thing to slow down a little. I've indeed been too impatient. The urgent need to improve over a long period of time had caused Bailey Hongzhuang to be extremely impatient. Although she did not usually show it, it had always been there. If this mentality had always existed, perhaps there would not be any problems in the short term. However, after a long time, this problem would become apparent. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but feel lucky. Lucky that she had discovered this malignant tumor in the process of the assessment. As long as she could solve it now, everything would still be in time. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but smile from the bottom of her heart. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, the dim environment in front of her eyes suddenly brightened. In another part of the room, a door quietly opened. Noticing this change, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes could not help but flash with a thick sense of astonishment. She knew very well that the opening of that door meant that she had passed the first stage. So this is my first stage of the assessment. It had already started from the moment I walked into this room. Yet I never knew. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. Her eyes were filled with amazement. This level of assessment was truly beyond her expectations. However, it had helped her a lot. Compared to the Blood Refining Tower's assessment, the Demon Refining Tower's assessment was undoubtedly a level higher. It seems that the Demon Refining Tower's assessment is based on one's heart. Bailey Hongzhuang thought to herself. It was precisely because the assessment was based on one's heart that the way it was conducted was even more unpredictable. If she had not gone through this assessment, she probably would not have known when she would have discovered the existence of this problem. It was truly amazing. This assessment had undoubtedly helped her to solve a hidden danger. It was extremely helpful to her. It seemed that as long as she passed the Demon Refining Tower, regardless of whether she succeeded or not, it would be of great help to a cultivator. Looking at the open door in front of her, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze gradually became determined. She must persevere. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang directly walked through the open door and began the next stage of the assessment. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang entered the room, the scene before her eyes suddenly changed. In her line of sight, it was a blood-red world, surrounded by countless cultivators. These cultivators were looking at her like wolves, tigers, and leopards. Their ferocious gazes were as if they wanted to tear her into pieces. Noticing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression suddenly became vigilant. Compared to the scene of the first test, this test seemed to be much more terrifying. The second test is very simple. At this moment, a voice suddenly entered Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. She couldn't help but raise her head and look around. She wanted to know where the sound was coming from, but it seemed to be everywhere. She couldn't tell where it was coming from. Kill everyone here and you'll pass. After hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned. Her eyes flashed with deep astonishment. As far as the eye could see, there were simply too many cultivators around her. How difficult would it be for her to kill all of them? However, this voice clearly had no intention of discussing with her. This was the content of the assessment. If she couldn't complete it, she would fail. Chapter 3786. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was hesitating, the surrounding cultivators had already swarmed towards her like a swarm of bees. Bailey Hongzhuang could see cruelty and excitement in those blood-red eyes. Obviously, if she did not kill these people in front of her, she would be the one to die. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but feel helpless. However, since this was the only way, she could only resolutely walk down this path. In the next moment, the colored glaze sword appeared in her hand. The elemental energy in her body surged out violently. Bailey Hongzhuang did not hesitate to meet the cultivators who were attacking her. The sound of weapons clashing quickly rang out. Bailey Hongzhuang executed the shifting forms technique to dodge the crowd's attacks as she shuttled back and forth between the crowd, harvesting their lives. This was an extremely bloody scene, filled with cruelty and heartlessness. Bailey Hongzhuang was not a heartless person. The cultivators who had died by her hands all had their reasons. The scene before her eyes was clearly different from what she had thought in the past. Unfortunately, she did not have a choice. Furthermore, these cultivators looked at her as if they were jackals and wolves who had finally seen food after being starved for a long time. Their eyes were filled with a faint thirst for food. It was disgusting and terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang continued to fight. She unleashed her martial arts techniques one after another, severely injuring the surrounding cultivators. Fortunately, although there were many cultivators, their combat power did not surpass hers by much. Hence, she was able to persevere. Even so, Bailey Hongzhuang was not optimistic. Because she was alone, her elemental energy would eventually dry up. Once her elemental energy was depleted, the person who would be in danger would be her. Hence, she had to reduce the consumption of her elemental energy while harvesting the lives of these cultivators. Time gradually passed. The number of cultivators who had fallen under Bailey Hongzhuang's sword gradually increased. Bailey Hongzhuang continuously consumed elixirs to replenish her elemental energy. She was thankful that she had brought quite a number of elixirs with her. Otherwise, she would have been exhausted to death here. Fatigue slowly crept in, and Bailey Hongzhuang's sword-wielding hand slowed down. With a slight carelessness, the number of wounds on her body had increased. The pain constantly stimulated her nerves. Unknowingly, her eyes had been stained with blood and were filled with viciousness and heartlessness. Her white robes had been stained red with blood. She could not tell if it was her own blood or someone else's. In the process of this battle, the murderous aura that Bailey Hongzhuang had gradually gathered around her body. This murderous aura was much more intense than the aura that she had accumulated in the arena area. The murderous aura in the arena area was a very mysterious power to her. It filled her body and could increase her strength, but the murderous aura in front of her was a murderous aura that came from her heart. At this moment, her eyes were completely bloodshot. Everyone in front of her was her enemy. What she wanted to do was to use her own hands to slaughter everything in front of her. This situation was completely out of her control. Once she stopped moving, she would be killed by these people. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang did not know how long she had been fighting. She only felt that the strength in her body was drained and her vision seemed to be blurred. However, the pain from her body stimulated her nerves, making her force herself to continue fighting. This was a bitter battle, a battle that was more miserable than being besieged by a group of cultivators in the outer hall of Punlai. Chapter 3787. When Bailey Hongzhuang exhausted all her strength to fight, Bewitching was also in the same situation. The flowing light sword in his hand was emitting a cold light. Bright red blood had already dyed the blade red. Looking at it, it was a shocking red. However, in this blood red, Bewitching's deep eyes became even darker. The kind of darkness seemed to be hiding a power that could devour everything. The long sword was brandished, contrasting with that impeccable godlike face, revealing a bit of bloodthirst and charm. Bewitching wrinkled his good-looking eyebrows. He had no scruples about these cultivators in front of him. Since he was allowed to kill all of them, then he would kill all of the obstacles. However, he was a little worried. If Bailey Hongzhuang's challenge was also like this, he didn't know if Hongzhuang could persevere. Normally, they would often engage in high-intensity battles. However, the battle in front of them was more cruel and desperate than any of the battles they had participated in before. In the past, he had always been by Hongzhuang's side. However, this time, only Hongzhuang was challenging the challenge. He was really a little worried. The inheritance of the MO Training Pagoda was more difficult than the inheritance of the Blood Chi Pagoda, but after understanding the content of the assessment of the MO Training Pagoda, Bewitching also understood why Mo Yunjue could not obtain the inheritance of the Blood Chi field, but could obtain the inheritance of the Murderous Chi field. This was because the Shurtian Tower was a dark and cruel place. As the young master of the Shurtian Tower, Mo Yunjue was certainly not unfamiliar with all of this. On the contrary, Mo Yunjue should be very suitable for this kind of environment. The trials he had passed before were very likely to be the same as the situation in front of him. It was precisely because of this that Mo Yunjue was able to smoothly obtain the inheritance. This was where his advantage lay. If it was an ordinary cultivator, just looking at the scene of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood in front of them, they would probably not be able to accept it. After all, everyone's hands are more or less stained with blood. However, such a huge amount of blood was something they had never experienced before. Bewitching also felt uncomfortable about the situation in front of him, but he didn't feel guilty. If his judgment was right, everything in front of him was probably an illusion. The characteristic of the killing aura was the killing aura. Presumably, this test was to let them adapt to such an environment. If they didn't have such killing aura, they probably wouldn't be able to condense such a terrifying killing aura. "Wife, do your best," Bewitching murmured. In the next moment, a fierce light suddenly bloomed in his eyes, and then he attacked the crowd without hesitation. Bailey Hongzhuang did not know how long she had been fighting. She only knew that she had to persevere. She could not die here. She wanted to obtain the inheritance of the killing aura. She still had many things to do. A pair of beautiful eyes were suffused with a blood-red light. That beautiful figure had now turned into a blood-red figure. The rich smell of blood covered her nose. The smell was almost nauseating. Finally, after the last cultivator fell, Bailey Hongzhuang could no longer persevere and fell into a coma. When Bailey Hongzhuang woke up again, in front of her was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. She looked at her hands and clothes that were stained with blood. Her long, shapely eyebrows unconsciously wrinkled. Her beautiful face was quietly covered with a touch of indifference. Chapter 3788. Bailey Hongzhuang thought that after experiencing that battle, she would be able to pass this hurdle. However, when she opened her eyes and realized that she was still in her previous environment, she understood that this stage was not over yet. After recovering her essence energy, she slowly followed the bloody path in front of her and walked forward. Gradually, a few figures appeared in front of her again. After seeing this scene, she understood that if she wanted to pass this stage, she must kill her way out. Otherwise, it would be considered a failure. Her pitch-black eyes suddenly emitted a sharp and cold light. Since that's the case, I'll kill my way out. Her cold voice was filled with unparalleled dominance and ruthlessness. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was extremely cold. The colored glaze sword in her hand emitted a cold light. She moved her shape-shifting shadow and shuttled through the crowd. As she raised her hand and swung her sword, she displayed all her martial skills. Every move was ruthless, and she aimed to kill with one blow. This battle not only tested Bailey Hongzhuang's primary energy and combat skills, but it also tested her heart. In such a long battle, if she could not stay true to her heart, it was very likely that she would fall into the devil's path and become a murderous demon. This was not what Bailey Hongzhuang wanted. Therefore, in the process of this battle, she had always tried her best to stay true to her heart. She cannot be affected like this. At this point, Bailey Hongzhuang firmly believed that her judgment was not wrong. Thinking back to when she was in the blood refining tower, she found that although the blood-ground abyss was a very evil place, the blood energy in the blood aura field did not contain any blood energy. On the contrary, it was a kind of pure blood energy without any impurities. All the cultivators in the Blood Aura Tower believed that in order to obtain the inheritance of the Blood Aura Tower, one must be strong enough and kill enough cultivators to gather the blood energy. However, this was not the case in reality. Similarly, if one could obtain the inheritance of the killing aura field by killing, then the number of inheritors would not be so small. This kind of murderous aura should also be pure without any impurities or evil thoughts. Just like how the murderous aura of a murderer was completely different from the murderous aura of an avenger, murderous aura was also different from murderous aura. If she treated everything in front of her as a massacre, then she would have failed this round. If she wanted to succeed, she had to stay true to herself and defeat these cultivators one by one. The inheritor of the murderous aura had to rely on his own strength to carve out a bloody path. Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't a stupid person. As soon as she passed the first trial, she understood that the Devil Training Pagoda's trials were actually an illusion. This kind of illusion existed in their hearts. Through this illusion, they could find the source of their own problems. Only by overcoming one's weakness could one become stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. She couldn't help but feel enlightened in her heart. Her moves also became smoother and more natural. In the trial area, after Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang entered the trial area, some cultivators heard the news and came over one after another. During this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had been in the limelight in the Devil Training Tower. Everyone paid close attention to them. Chapter 3789. Most of the cultivators thought that they would come out in less than 4 hours if they failed the first test. However, what happened next was beyond the expectations of most cultivators. They've been in there for an entire day and they haven't come out yet. Don't tell me they've passed the first test? According to what I know, each test takes a day. If one can stay in there for 3 days, they'll be able to receive the inheritance of the murderous aura. Mo Yunju stayed in there for 3 days. However, most of the cultivators came out not long after they went in. It's already amazing if they can stay in there for a few hours. They've been in there for more than a day. Don't tell me they've really received the inheritance of the murderous aura? One of the cultivators couldn't help but exclaim. If Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying had also received the inheritance, it would be shocking news. However, the cultivator's thought was quickly refuted by the others. Impossible, impossible. It's not that easy to receive the inheritance of the murderous aura. They're just lucky to have stayed in there until now. Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were originally in closed-door cultivation. They only wanted to break through before going to the test. However, as the test area became more and more lively, they couldn't help but go to the test area to check out the situation. Mo Yunjue, is what they said true? Shangwan Yingying couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. They'll succeed if they stay in there for 3 days? Hearing this, Mo Yunjue pondered for a moment. His expression was somewhat complicated as he said, I'm not very clear about this matter either, but I did stay inside for 3 days when I tried to break through the trial. There are a total of 3 tests. As long as they pass all 3 tests, they'll be able to receive the inheritance. Xiren's eyes lit up. If that's the case, it might really be like what everyone said. Indeed, Mo Yunjue nodded. It seems that Hong Zhuang and Shangwan Yingying have reached the second test. It's very likely that they'll succeed. Ao Lingxiao's eyes shone with surprise. He had personally passed through the test area and knew very well how difficult it was. Ever since he knew that Mo Yunjue had passed the test, he was very surprised. However, he didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen to have a chance of passing the test as well. Back then, he had only been in there for a few hours before he had no choice but to leave. At that time, he only felt that this assessment was too abnormal, and that it would be extremely difficult to pass it. However, Mo Yunjue and the others in front of him made him understand that this difficulty was just his own feeling. He couldn't do it, but someone else could. Thinking of this, Ao Ling Zhao's eyes couldn't help but change a little. If Di Beichen could really obtain the inheritance, perhaps he could believe that his judgment was not wrong. With Di Beichen's strength, even if his judgment was wrong, it wouldn't matter too much. Bailey Hongzhuang swung the sword in her hand. After a few days of fighting, she was shocked to find that her opponents were getting stronger and stronger. Fighting against these powerhouses, she felt more and more pressure. It became more and more difficult for her to move forward. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's confidence wasn't affected at all. Instead, it became even more determined. Chapter 3790. Bailey Hongzhuang's advancing speed slowed down. In the process of fighting, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that there was actually an opportunity to cultivate here. Once the Yuan Li in her body was exhausted, she could retreat to a place that she had cleared before, and there, her opponents would not take the initiative to provoke her. In this way, her threat was reduced by a bit. However, everything here was too special, and she could only rest after fighting to her limit. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang was both helpless and happy. Helpless because every battle was incomparably painful, and happy because in this process, her strength was increasing at a very fast rate. Compared to fighting in the outside world, fighting with all her strength like this was undoubtedly the best way to increase her strength. If it wasn't for the fact that she was wasting so much time here, cultivating here could also be considered an excellent method. Until now, she had no idea how long she had been in this place, and did not know if everyone had been waiting for her outside. Of course, this thought only appeared for a short moment, and was then suppressed by Bailey Hongzhuang. Since she had already reached this step, then there was no possibility of her giving up. She believed that it wouldn't be long before she would be able to pass the second stage. In this endless process of killing, Bailey Hongzhuang gradually understood what Mo Yunjue meant by advancing courageously and fearlessly. Without this courageously and fearlessly belief, it was absolutely impossible to rely on one's own strength to carve out a bloody path. In this process, Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked to discover that there was no fear in her heart, as if nothing could hurt her anymore. Fear was an emotion that existed in everyone's heart. No matter how strong a person was, there was only something in their heart that they were afraid of. However, in this process of getting stronger and stronger, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the feeling of fear was gradually shrinking. After discovering this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be shocked. This was simply too shocking. She had never thought that this method could actually suppress fear. The Demon Training Tower is truly magical. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. This was the power of the Demon Training Tower, and at the same time, this was also the reason why it was so difficult for everyone to pass the stage. It was because it was simply too difficult to overcome this, but once it was overcome, then one would truly have the heart of a powerhouse. No wonder since ancient times, all the cultivators who obtained the inheritance were famous figures. To have such a heart of a powerhouse, it would not be easy to not make a name for oneself. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. I just don't know how long it will take to break out of this bloody path. Bailey Hongzhuang gazed behind her. The path behind her, the path she had killed so many people, Hongzhuang, and the shocking red around her was now no longer make her feel uncomfortable. Forget it, she thought. She of Bailey Hongzhuang's, as long as she had a heart, I will definitely defeat all those people in front of me. Bailey Hongzhuang's pitch-black eyes flashed with a determined light. Her figure flashed, and she once again rushed into the crowd. Compared to the long wait that Bailey Hongzhuang felt, the cultivators outside of the challenge area had a completely different feeling. Chapter 3791. I never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching would be so powerful. They've been in there for such a long time and still haven't come out. If they pass the second stage, then only the third stage is left. Once they pass the third stage, they'll be able to obtain the inheritance. Why did I feel that the third stage was particularly difficult when I went in? Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zichen's trial was relatively easy? That's possible. Maybe the Demon Training Tower saw that they were good-looking and lowered the difficulty of the trial. Following this person's words, everyone couldn't help but chuckle. It was clearly a joke, but everyone actually believed it. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zichen's performance had clearly exceeded their expectations. They simply couldn't believe it. In comparison, this reason was much easier for them to accept. Almost everyone didn't want anyone else to obtain the inheritance. This only proved that they were far from Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zichen's level. However, Xiren and the others' emotions were the complete opposite. In my opinion, since Bewitching and Yi Zichen are already halfway through the second stage, they'll definitely succeed. Xiren couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. He had always thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zichen's strength would definitely succeed. Now, it seemed that the possibility of success was very high. Mo Yunjue smiled and nodded. I also believe that they'll definitely succeed. Xiren, Hongzhuang, and Yi Zichen are still trying to pass the stage. I can't bear to cultivate, so I'll just stay outside. I'll be able to know the results as soon as possible. As for wasting a few days, that's nothing. All right. Xiren rubbed Shangwan Yingying's hair dotingly. In fact, his mentality was exactly the same as Shangwan Yingying's. Bewitching continued to move forward. One corpse after another formed a path under his feet. A path of blood. This was truly a path of blood. Bewitching sighed in his heart. No wonder the cultivators in the Demon Training Tower fought so cruelly. This was the characteristic of the Demon Training Abyss. Becoming a murderous demon, killing anyone who stood in his way. If Buddha stood in his way, he would kill Buddha. This was truly a terrifying and domineering state. If one's willpower was not strong enough, they would probably be tortured to insanity by such days. In the process of killing, Bewitching found that his cultivation was growing at an astonishing speed. His combat strength was also increasing rapidly. If this continues, I'm sure my cultivation will have improved by the time I'm done with this trial. However, as time passed, whether it was Bailey Hong Zhuang or Di Bei Chun, there was a feeling of loneliness in their hearts. Everyone was his enemy, and the only one he could trust was himself. If they wanted to live, they had to kill all their opponents. As a result, the feeling of loneliness continued to spread in his heart. Bailey Hong Zhuang did not know how many days she had spent in this endless slaughter. Day after day had made her feel numb. She did not know how many days had passed since she had participated in the trial. She remembered that Mo Yunjue had only participated in the trial for a short period of time. She never thought that she would need such a long time to complete the trial. In front of her, she was only 100 meters away from completing the trial. Thinking of this, a bright light shone in her eyes. After fighting for so long, she was finally going to complete the trial. Chapter 3792. Ding. After Bailey Hong Zhuang had killed the last cultivator, Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes flashed with a deep sigh. The colored glass sword pierced the ground, emitting a sharp sound. At the same time, Bailey Hong Zhuang also sat on the ground, her body paralyzed. Looking at the bloody scene in the distance, her mood was complicated. It was lonely at the top. Perhaps this was how it felt. The long period of killing and loneliness made her feel an indescribable sadness and desolation. It was clearly just a test, but it inexplicably made her feel an indescribable sadness. Just as Bailey Hong Zhuang was sighing, she suddenly realized that the scene in front of her had changed. A green figure appeared in her line of sight. Looking at this figure, Bailey Hong Zhuang felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. As she gradually approached, she recognized the owner of the figure. Han Xiling. Bailey Hong Zhuang cried out in astonishment. Staring blankly at the figure in front of her, she could only wonder if she had seen wrongly. Following Bailey Hong Zhuang's words, the green figure quickly turned around, revealing a face that Bailey Hong Zhuang could not be more familiar with. Bailey Hong Zhuang, long time no see. Han Xiling's lips curled into a cold smile. Did you think that I was already dead? Are you not dead? Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes narrowed. She clearly believed that Han Xiling was already dead. Although she did not manage to find Han Xiling's body, she firmly believed that under such circumstances, Han Xiling could not possibly still be alive. However, this figure in front of her, could it really be because her uncle, Han Xiling, was not dead? Hee. Han Xiling laughed coldly. I won't die so easily. Then why haven't you shown up for so long? I was severely injured by you. Fortunately, I survived. I've been recuperating for the past few years. Now that I've finally recovered, my cultivation base has also improved greatly. Han Xiling glanced coldly at Bailey Hong Zhuang. I know you're married to Bei Chun, but so what? In the end, he will still be mine. Bailey Hong Zhuang frowned. Even if you're still alive, it means nothing to us. No. Han Xiling's eyes were filled with contempt. Didn't you kill me because you were afraid that I would marry Bei Chun? You clearly know that the entire Tiangang sect is in favor of my marriage with Bei Chun. If you didn't appear, Bei Chun and I would have already gotten married. I don't know how your relationship was in the past, and I don't care. However, everything is a foregone conclusion now. If you don't want to die, you'd better leave on your own. Bailey Hong Zhuang's voice was slightly cold. She had always hated Han Xiling. This woman was vicious. From the moment they met, this woman had been causing trouble for her everywhere. She even tried to secretly kill her. If she had not been careful, she would have died in Han Xiling's hands. However, Han Xiling's reappearance still caused a ripple in her heart. This woman's reappearance was not a good thing after all. I'll leave. Han Xiling chuckled. Why should I leave? You're the one who came between Bei Chun and me. The person who should leave should be you. Chapter 3793. So what? Han Xiling's lips curled into a sneer. Actually, I've always had a place in Bei Chun's heart. It's just that you didn't know about it. You have to know that when Beichun was being oppressed by the sect, it was me who had been silently helping him. He will always remember me. You try to kill me. Do you think Beichun doesn't care at all? Han Shiling's words hit Bailey Hongzhuang's heart hard. This was what she was most worried about after killing Han Shiling. She believed that Beichun didn't like Han Shiling, but no matter what, Han Shiling had done Beichun a favor. It was precisely because of this that Beichun would tolerate her a lot. But in the end, Han Shiling still died in her hands. Although Beichun said that this matter wasn't her fault, she believed that Beichun must have cared about this matter. No matter how hateful Han Shiling was, she was still Beichun's sister. Aren't you still alive now? Bailey Hongzhuang said coldly. Hearing this, Han Shiling chuckled. Yes, I'm not dead, so I'm going to snatch Beichun from your hands. Impossible, stop dreaming. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Shiling indifferently. She believed in Beichun's feelings for her. Han Shiling didn't succeed in the first place, and now it was even more impossible. Bailey Hongzhuang, I think you don't seem to understand men. For men, what they can't get is the best. Once they get it, the feeling is completely different. Back then, didn't Beichun take a fancy to you because he was with me all the time? Now that our situation has been reversed, it's time to rewrite the result. Hearing Han Shiling's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression didn't change. Don't talk nonsense. Everything is not as you think. She and Beichun had been together for so long, and Beichun's sincerity towards her could be seen by the sun and moon. She had never doubted this point. Oh, you're really that confident? Of course. Since that's the case, why don't we make a bet? Han Shiling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang coldly. His eyes were filled with confidence. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. How do you want to bet? It's very simple. You'll hide in my house. I'll talk to Beichun's. If he doesn't have me, then I'll leave and never disturb you two's life. On the contrary, if he does have a place for me, then you're not allowed to appear in front of Beichun in the future. This bet is completely meaningless. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with disdain. You'll definitely lose this round. Bailey Hongzhuang, it's too early for you to say that. If you're overconfident, the result will be very embarrassing for you. How about it? Do you dare to make a bet with me? If you don't have the guts, then you might as well just leave. Han Shiling's face was filled with provocation, as if he had a card up his sleeve and was certain that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't dare to agree. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately said coldly, Since you insist, I'll make a bet with you. However, if you lose, you'll have to disappear completely in the future. No problem. Han Shiling nodded without hesitation. Beichun will be very happy to see me. You'll definitely lose. You're thinking too much, Bailey Hongzhuang said coldly. Chapter 3794. Hearing the familiar footsteps, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately realized that this person was Beichun. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly hid in the room. As soon as she hid, Beichun opened the door. However, when Beichun saw Han Shiling in the room, his face could not help but be filled with a deep astonishment. Shiling, you're still alive? Didn't you die in the assessment? Han Shiling stared at Beichun affectionately, her eyes full of longing. She did not answer Beichun's words, and she hugged Beichun. Beichun, I thought I would never see you again in my life. Fortunately, I survived, so I have the opportunity to come back and see you. Han Shiling's eyes were misty. It's great to see you again. I miss you so much. Bailey Hongzhuang behind the screen could not help but frown after seeing this scene. Han Shiling was too active, and this scene of hugging was really a bit of an eyesore in her eyes. Beichun slowly stepped back, making Han Shiling leave his arms, and then he said, I thought you had fallen. I didn't expect you to still be alive. After seeing Beichun's move, Bailey Hongzhuang showed a satisfied look. Han Shiling looked at Beichun with tears in her eyes. Aren't you happy to see that I'm still alive? No. Beichun shook his head. I'm relieved to know that you're still alive. Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang was too ruthless. She wanted to take my life as soon as she made a move, and she also colluded with Xia Jiqing to kill me. If it weren't for my good fortune, It would be impossible for me to appear in front of you now. Shieling, if you didn't force her step by step, Hong Zhuang wouldn't do this. Di Beichen sighed, and there was a bit of helplessness in his expression. However, Han Shilling took Di Beichen's hand and said, "It's not like this at all. Beichen, it's Bailey Hong Zhuang who spread rumors in front of you. She thought I was dead, so she began to talk nonsense. She planned to take my life because she cared about the relationship between you and me, so she wanted to kill me forever. No matter what, I'm your sister. Don't you think she's too much?" Hearing this, Di Beichen didn't speak. He just looked at Han Shilling with complicated eyes, but he didn't speak. Seeing this, Han Shilling was obviously not reconciled. She immediately shook Di Beichen's arm. "Beichen, do you not believe me? I'm telling the truth. I went through a lot of hardships to come back. Do you think that I'm lying?" Han Shilling couldn't help but sob. "I know. You think I'm unreasonable, but I really didn't lie about this." Looking at Han Shilling like this, Di Beichen couldn't help but say, "Shilling, I don't believe you." "So you believe what I said?" Han Shilling's eyes flashed with a strong emotion. Di Beichen nodded, and after Bailey Hong Zhuang saw Di Beichen's performance behind the screen, her heart couldn't help but sink. She didn't expect that Di Beichen would believe what Han Shilling said. Di Beichen had always said that he believed in her the most and never doubted her, but now he said such words to Han Shilling. Chapter 3795. It must be that Han Shilling just came back, and Beichan feels guilty, so he said such words just to comfort her. Bailey Hong Zhuang comforted herself. If she was in his shoes, maybe she would do the same thing. It was not incomprehensible. However, she clearly noticed that Han Shilling looked at her with a bit of provocation. This woman really liked to play tricks. "Beichan, I heard that you and Bailey Hong Zhuang are married." Han Shilling stared at Di Beichan, and tears rolled down like broken pearls. "My goal since I was a child is to marry you. You know it clearly. Do I have no place in your heart for so many years?" Looking at Han Shilling's tearful appearance, Di Beichen was also somewhat at a loss. "Shiling, don't be like this. I have liked you for so many years, and I have already decided on you. I know that you rarely have contact with women. Among the women, only Shangwaning Ying and I can talk to you. Shangwaning Ying is Xiren's sweetheart, so you will talk to her. What about me? If you don't have me in your heart, why do you always let me accompany you?" Han Shilling looked at Di Beichen stubbornly, as if she had already decided on everything. "Shiling, it doesn't make sense to say all this now. Hong Zhuang and I are married. She's my wife. I don't care." Han Shilling rushed forward again and hugged Di Beichen tightly. "As long as you have a little place for me in your heart, I am willing to accompany you. I don't ask for status. I just want to accompany you." "Shiling." Di Beichen frowned, and his expression was extremely complicated. Han Shilling raised her head in Di Beichen's arms, and her crying face looked lovely. "Is this not okay?" Di Beichen stared at Han Shilling, and his eyes were full of struggle. Finally, he said helplessly, "Shiling, Hong Zhuang will not be willing. Hong Zhuang will not be willing." This sentence exploded in Bailey Hong Zhuang's mind. Di Beichen said that she would not be willing. Didn't that mean that Di Beichen was willing in his heart? Thinking of this, Bailey Hong Zhuang felt that it was difficult to accept. For a long time, all she wanted was to be with Di Beichen. She thought that Di Beichen treated her wholeheartedly. She had never thought that Di Beichen's heart had other thoughts. Other thoughts. Her heart seemed to be blocked by something, and she felt unspeakably uncomfortable. Bailey Hong Zhuang couldn't help but reach out and cover her chest. Her dark eyes stared at Di Beichen. The face that she usually felt familiar with was particularly strange at this moment. How could this be? This thought kept flashing in Bailey Hong Zhuang's mind. She couldn't believe that the final result would become like this. She had been so firm and had been so convinced, but Di Beichen's answer at this moment was tantamount to giving her a blow. Han Shiling's sarcastic words before echoed in her ears. Was she really too confident? Recalling Di Beichen's kindness to her, and the original oath was still vivid in her mind. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt a stabbing pain in her heart, making it difficult for her to breathe. Chapter 3796. Han Shilling looked at Di Beichun affectionately, her eyes full of anticipation. That kind of affection was like a moth darting into a flame. As long as Di Beichun gave a positive answer, she would be willing to put down everything and stay by his side. Di Beichun lowered his head and stared into those watery eyes before finally nodding his head. Seeing this scene, Han Shilling's face suddenly lit up with a happy smile. Beichun, I knew that there must be a place for me in your heart. Han Shilling's heart was overflowing with joy. She couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang's position. Her expression was clearly telling Bailey Hongzhuang, "You've lost." Bailey Hongzhuang stood in a daze as she looked at Di Beichun, who was hugging Han Shilling. She opened her mouth, but felt as if an invisible hand was strangling her neck, making her unable to say a word. Her heart suddenly felt empty. Compared to the suppressed heartache, this empty feeling was even more unbearable. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that her firm belief had completely collapsed at this moment. It turned out that Beichun wasn't that sincere towards her. It was just that she had always been too confident. She didn't know if it was because Beichun had always been too good at pretending in front of her, or if it was because she was too trusting of others that she ended up in this helpless situation. Bailey Hongzhuang retracted her gaze and no longer looked at the two people. She felt suffocated if she looked at them any longer. Her body slowly slid to the ground. She couldn't help but reach out her hands to hug herself. She felt a chill on her body. This coldness spread from the bottom of her heart and couldn't be warmed up at all. From the first time she met Di Beichun to the various interactions later, all the scenes appeared in front of her eyes. Her eyes unconsciously became misty and tears flowed down uncontrollably, soaking her sleeves. Why? Why? This thought kept appearing in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. The ground was cold, but it couldn't compare to the chill in her heart. How would she face Di Beichun from now on? How was she going to tell her parents? However, at this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze suddenly froze. No, that can't be. Bailey Hongzhuang's misty eyes gradually became firm. Beichun wouldn't do this to me. My judgment can't be wrong. She clearly remembered that although Beichun cared about Han Shilling's help in the past, when she stood on the opposite side of Han Shilling, Beichun had always stood firmly on her side. From the beginning to the end, he had never shown any interest in Han Shilling. If Beichun really did like Han Shilling, then he could just be together with Han Shilling. Why would he need to go through so much trouble? Bailey Hongzhuang gradually became clear-headed. Her mind was filled with the scenes of Di Beichun protecting her. From a beginning to the end, between her and Han Shilling, Di Beichun had always chosen her. Beichun definitely couldn't have any personal feelings for Han Shilling. He was deeply in love with her. Why would he do such a thing? Bailey Hongzhuang wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and slowly stood up from the ground. She immediately pushed the screen aside and looked at the two people in front of her. Upon seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun's face quickly became flustered. Wife, listen to my explanation. Chapter 3797. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun hurriedly walked in front of her and held her hands tightly. Wife, listen to me. It's not like what you see. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the anxious Di Beichun in front of her, and her lips slowly curled into a mocking smile. I've already seen through it. You're not Beichun, and Han Shilling is already dead. You're just an illusion. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun and Han Shilling's faces were filled with fear. In the next moment, the scene in front of them shattered like a mirror and disappeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Unknowingly, the trial area was filled with cultivators. This level of excitement was unprecedented in the Devil Training Tower. Almost all the cultivators who knew about this had rushed over. Even though the trial area was empty, it was now filled with cultivators. Some cultivators also wanted to squeeze in to see what was going on. Unfortunately, There are just too many cultivators inside, and there was no place for them to stand. It's already the third day, and the two of them still haven't come out after going in. Could it be that the two of them can really obtain the inheritance? Previously, everyone was certain that Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shilling could not obtain the Hui City's inheritance. Now, no one dared to make such a claim. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang and Han Shilling had already used their performance to prove that they had already passed the third trial. Once they passed the third trial, they would be able to possess a murderous aura. Thinking of this possibility, everyone found it hard to believe. I never thought that they would be so powerful. If only one of them had lasted until now, it would be fine. But the two of them have lasted until now. This is just too shocking. They've already reached the third trial. I heard that the third trial is the simplest and most difficult trial. It won't be easy to pass it. If they can really obtain the inheritance, I'll have to ask them about the secret of passing the trial when they come out. After all, I don't believe that there's no secret to the inheritance of 3 people in a team. Everyone nodded. Half of the third day had already passed. Although they were unwilling to admit it, they already felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and Gu Shizhou would most likely obtain the final inheritance. If there really is a secret, that would be great. Of course, it is said that this killing intent field is extraordinary when used. It is of great help to cultivators. A group of cultivators was drooling endlessly, and in their minds, they had already begun to think about how to get the information from Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth. When Bailey Hongzhuang woke up from the illusion, her vision was still filled with corpses and a sea of blood. The shocking red color stimulated her nerves. A sense of shock crept onto her face. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. Could it be that I was too tired and had a dream? This dream was too realistic. But I've never had a dream like this before. Bailey Hongzhuang felt a little helpless. She had always trusted Bewitching and had never thought in this direction. She never thought that she would have a dream like this. It was really unexpected. Chapter 3798. Even though she knows that it was all fake, she still felt terrible when she recalled it. Fortunately, it had only been a strange dream. This kind of thing would never happen in reality. Bailey Hongzhuang cursed silently. Beichen's feelings for her were clear as day. If she were to have any doubts in the future, it would not be right. Just then, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly felt a powerful energy entering her body. She quickly raised her head and looked around her. She was shocked to find that streaks of blood-red energy had suddenly appeared from the corpses on the ground and were surging into her body. When she discovered this energy, Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked. She had no idea what was going on and did not know whether this energy was good or bad. However, Bailey Hongzhuang soon realized that this energy was murderous intent. Could this be my reward for passing the second stage? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly curled into a smile. She could now confirm that this energy would not harm her. On the contrary, it would be quite beneficial to her. Aside from a reward, she could not think of any other possibility. Immediately after, Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and calmly absorbed the energy that was rushing towards her. It looks like the third day is almost over. Does this mean that Beichin and the others have succeeded? When Xiren could not hide the joy on his face. Even though he had always believed that Bailey Hongzhuang and Beichin would succeed, he still found it hard to believe when this had actually happened. The inheritance of the Demon Training Tower was notoriously difficult. However, Beichin and Hongzhuang had both succeeded. Just by looking at the looks of disbelief on the faces of the surrounding cultivators, one could tell how incredible this was. And Mo Yunjue's eyes darkened as he nodded. I think that should be the case. Now that we've reached the final step, the chances of failure shouldn't be too high. If they really succeed, that would be incredible. Ao Lingxiao couldn't help but sigh. Normally, it would be extremely difficult for a single cultivator to successfully pass the test. Now, 3 of them had appeared. This was definitely big news that would shock the entire Penglai Island. He didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beiqian to be so powerful. They were really heroes. Just based on this point alone, the cultivators of Penglai Palace could not compare with them. If Chu Yinyao knew about this, she would definitely have a headache. Haha, I'm really looking forward to Hong Zhuang and the others coming out. I don't know how many people will envy them. Shangguan Yingying clasped her hands together, and her face was full of excitement. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded, and then a golden light quietly appeared. Noticing this ray of light, the cultivators present could not help but be stunned. The originally noisy environment also quieted down at this moment. After Imo Yunjin noticed the golden light, the smile on his face widened. He was no stranger to this ray of light. Everyone saw 3 golden words appear on the stone wall in front of the challenge area. Bewitching. This was a stone wall that recorded the inheritance. Only the name of the cultivator who obtained the inheritance would appear on this stone wall. Therefore, the appearance of this name meant that Bewitching had successfully obtained the inheritance. Chapter 3799. Success. Beichen succeeded. Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but jump up in excitement after noticing the resplendent golden name. The inheritance of the Devil Training Pagoda was truly an incredible inheritance. Beichen really succeeded. Xiren couldn't help but wave his fist, his face full of excitement. Beichen is still as abnormal as before. Breaking through wasn't a problem for him at all. That's really good news. Imo Yunjue's lips curled into a faint smile, a deep light flashing in his eyes. Ao Lingxiao didn't say anything, but his gaze quietly fell on the door of the breaking room. His handsome face quietly climbed up with a hint of determination. He felt that it was time for him to voice his conjecture. No matter if his conjecture was correct or not, they would be able to confirm it. Not long after Bewitching's name appeared, the door of the breaking room suddenly opened. Immediately after, Bewitching's figure appeared in everyone's line of sight. Looking at the extraordinarily handsome figure, everyone's eyes flashed with envy. He's out. Bewitching is out. I never thought that this guy would actually be able to obtain the inheritance of the Devil Training Pagoda. How enviable. Murderous aura. I've only heard of its name, but I don't know what kind of amazing effects it has. This Bewitching is also the inheritor of the blood aura. With 2 inheritances gathered together, this Bewitching is really amazing. After Bewitching came out, he immediately noticed Xiren and the others. After noticing that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't beside Xiren and the others, his dark eyes flashed with a bright light. Beichen, congratulations. Shangguan Ying was the first to speak. Xiren walked to Beichen's side with a smile. Beichen, you really live up to your reputation. You're as abnormal as always. Beichen, congratulations. Mo Yunjue and Ao Lingxiao both congratulated him. Beichen's lips curled into a smile as he cupped his hands and said, Many thanks. Hong Zhuang hasn't come out yet. No. Xiren nodded. Last time, you husband and wife received the inheritance of the blood aura together. It seems that this time, you will receive the inheritance of the killing aura together. Since the time has come, Hong Zhuang's inheritance should be a done deal, Mo Yunjue said with a smile. Beichen nodded slightly, and the corners of his eyes and brows were also raised with joy. That's great, but why are there suddenly so many people around here? Isn't that obvious? Naturally, it's because of you and Hong Zhuang. Shangguan Yingying smiled. Previously, everyone bet that you wouldn't be able to make it through the first stage. However, as you stayed inside longer and longer, everyone couldn't hold back their curiosity. So, they all rushed over to see for themselves. I see. Beichen's face flashed with understanding. He thought that everyone came after knowing the result. He didn't expect that everyone had been so concerned about this matter before. Beichen, is the content of this stage difficult? Shangguan Ying asked curiously. Beichen thought for a moment and said, It's not that difficult. However, if it's not difficult, it's not easy to pass. It's that complicated? Chapter 3800. The most important thing when challenging a trial is to be fearless and always believe in what you believe in. That way, your chances of success will greatly increase. As he spoke, Bewitching could not help but look at Mo Yunjue and said, Yunjue, you should feel the same, right? Mo Yunjue nodded. That's right. The most important thing is to be fearless. Once your confidence is shaken, then you won't be able to pass the trial. When Xiren and Shangguan Ying glanced at each other when they heard this, and they seemed to be lost in thought. If it was a test of battle power, they might be able to make a judgment. However, if it was a test of one's heart, then it would be very difficult to make a judgment. After all, the human heart was the most complicated. Everyone's state of mind was different, and the test they faced would naturally be completely different as well. Therefore, they were unable to make a judgment based on this point. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and absorbed the endless energy that was surging into her body. She felt the murderous aura on her body continuously gathering. When a murderous aura gathered to a certain level, she felt a kind of aura quietly forming. She was not unfamiliar with this feeling. Back when she had first obtained the blood aura, it had been the same situation. Could it be that this murderous aura was a murderous aura? I've clearly only passed through 2 trials. How could I have received the inheritance? Bailey Hongzhuang was puzzled. She had thought that she did not know how abnormal the 3rd trial was. She never thought that she had already received the inheritance. Could it be that the dream I had previously was the 3rd trial? Very quickly, Bailey Hongzhuang realized where the problem lay. Everyone knew that the trials of the Demon Training Tower were divided into 3 levels. It was impossible for her to have received the inheritance after only 2 trials. Therefore, that dream must have been the 3rd trial. The Demon Training Tower is indeed powerful. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. If it wasn't for my trust in Beichan, I'm afraid that I would have failed in the 3rd trial. Previously, she had killed until she was completely exhausted in the 2nd trial. Her mind was also very tired. Then, she had fallen into that kind of situation. She had entered the illusion when her consciousness was at its most blurred. Under such circumstances, it was very easy to be confused. Fortunately, she woke up at the last moment and was not deceived by the illusion. Otherwise, she would have failed. She had always thought that her mind was strong enough, but Beichan was the person she cared about the most. She didn't expect that this test would start with Beichan, and she almost fell for it. Now that she thought about it, she also felt that she was too stupid before. She trusted Beichan so much, but in the end, she still felt heartache. There are indeed very few people who can pass such a test. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. One had to overcome one's own inner demons in order to obtain the inheritance. As the murderous aura gradually took shape, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation began to rise rapidly. 8th level of the Purple Realm. 9th level of the Purple Realm. Her aura continued to rise, but Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know what realm she had reached. When everything in front of Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes returned to normal and she once again appeared in the stone room, the corners of her lips curled into a smile. She slowly clenched her hands into fists and felt the abundant energy in her body. Her smile widened. The inheritance of the Demon Training Tower is indeed extraordinary. My power has increased by a lot. Chapter 3801. I just don't know what level of strength I have now. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. Her current strength was not the same as it had been 1,000 years ago. She had no way of determining it. However, according to her intuition, there was definitely a realm above the Purple Realm. She just didn't know about it. It seems that we'll have to wait until we return to the Penglai Palace to find out. Lord Long and the others must know about the situation after the Purple Realm. There were many strong cultivators in the Penglai Palace. She believed that there would definitely be cultivators above the Purple Realm. Perhaps they would be able to learn more about the Dark Power. With the spread of the news that Beichan had obtained the inheritance, the number of cultivators gathered in the breakthrough area increased. Almost everyone wanted to find out what had happened. Bewitching has already obtained the inheritance and left. Why is Bailey Hongzhuang still inside? Could it be that the inheritance doesn't only last 3 days? She just stayed inside for a long time, but didn't succeed? That's possible. Bewitching's success alone is already very abnormal. If Bailey Hongzhuang also succeeds, I have to wonder if there's something wrong with this challenge area. However, just as his cultivator said this, a golden light suddenly flashed. It was a complete slap in the face. A shining name appeared on the stone wall again, Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's names were written together just like that, stimulating everyone's nerves. Is there any justice in this world? A cultivator could not help but hold his head. It's only been 2 or 3 months, and 3 inheritors have appeared in succession. This is too exciting. What's going on? Either none of them appear in 100 years, or so many of them appear at once. This is too irregular. I think you should stop comforting yourself. It's not about the content of the challenge at all. It's just that Bewitching and the others are really powerful. There are also many calm cultivators present, even though this news had shocked them a lot. But thinking about the previous performance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, although this was unexpected, it was not unacceptable if they thought about it carefully. At this moment, a white figure slowly walked out of the challenge room. Envious gazes swept over to Bailey Hongzhuang, only to see that this woman had a beauty that could topple cities, swaying with the wind as she walked. She was clearly indifferent and alienated, but she gave people a feeling of elegance like an immortal. For a moment, the men present looked at her with blurred eyes. Fairies really did exist in this world. Her looks were outstanding, and her strength was tyrannical. Such a woman was truly everyone's fantasy. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang walked out, she realized that there was a sea of people outside. Everyone's eyes were fixed on her. She could not help but feel astonished. I never thought that so many people would come. Bailey Hongzhuang secretly sighed. Master, congratulations. You successfully received the inheritance. Xiaohei jumped excitedly. Previously, when Master was challenging the challenge, I couldn't speak at all. I almost suffocated to death. Now, I can finally speak. Congratulations, Master. Xiaobai and Baishir quickly followed up with their congratulations. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. You're the ones with the sweet tongues. Chapter 38:02. Bewitching came to Bailey Hongzhuang's side for the first time, his dark and bright eyes sparkling as he held Bailey Hongzhuang's soft and boneless hand. Wifey, congratulations. Beichin, did you pass? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. However, Beichin frowned and didn't say anything. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze couldn't help but change. She thought to herself, could it be that Beichin didn't receive the inheritance? She glanced at Mo Yunjue and the others in confusion. Mo Yunjue and Ao Lingxiao didn't say anything. However, when her gaze landed on Xiren, when Xiren couldn't help but chuckle. Hongzhuang, you're so powerful. As your husband, Beichin naturally wouldn't be too bad. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. When she looked at Beichin again, she found that the corners of his lips were slowly rising. So you lied to me on purpose. How would I dare? Beichin smiled dotingly. That's great. You've all successfully received the inheritance. This is great news. I'm sure sect leader Situ and the others will be proud of you when they know about this. Shangguan Yingying clapped her hands, her eyes filled with yearning, when Xiren looked at Beichin and Bailey Hongzhuang. Although I can't determine your current cultivation, I can feel that your auras have improved a lot. Hearing this, Beichin and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other and smiled. This isn't a good place to talk. Let's go back first. At this moment, Mo Yunjue suddenly reminded them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked around and saw that everyone was looking at them curiously, wanting to know what they were talking about. Beichin nodded. Okay. It wasn't until they left the challenge area that the cultivators in the challenge area left one after another. Beichin, where are your cultivations now? As soon as they entered the house, when Xiren's curious gaze fell upon Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Yiqian. He was really curious to see how much their powers would increase after successfully clearing the stage. Bewitching frowned and said, I should be above the 9th level of the Purple Realm, but I can't tell what level I am exactly at. That's right, me too. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Beichen's cultivation should be higher than mine. He was originally 1 level higher than me. In that case, Hongzhuang, you're already above the 9th level of the Purple Realm? Yes. In my opinion, we should have entered an even higher level. It's just that we can't tell at the moment. As he spoke, Bewitching couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue and said, Yunjue, are you the same? Yes. Xiren chuckled. It seems that the inheritance of the Devil Training Tower is really amazing. If we relied on our own cultivation, it would probably take a long time to reach this level of cultivation. Now, we've only succeeded in clearing the stage, and our cultivation has increased by so much. How long have I been in the challenge area? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. I feel like I've been in there for a long time. Chapter 3803. Only 3 days? Bailey Hongzhuang was astonished. The feeling inside is completely different. I thought I stayed inside for a long time. Luckily, it was only 3 days. Speaking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly lit up, and she couldn't help but sigh. It's only been 3 days, but my cultivation has improved so much. If I could repeatedly break through this barrier, it would be amazing. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bewitching and the rest couldn't help but chuckle. If the situation is really like that, wouldn't it be amazing? In just 1 year, I'll become a #1 expert. Haha, that's true. As for this cultivation, we'll ask Master Long when we return to Penglai Palace. He'll definitely know about it, Bewitching said slowly. At this moment, Ao Lingxiao, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, There's no need to go back. I know what realm you're in now. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest couldn't help but be stunned. Their gazes fell on Ao Lingxiao. You know? That's right. Ao Lingxiao nodded. I know. Above the Purple Realm is the Starlight Realm. You're in the Starlight Realm now. Ao Lingxiao looked at Bewitching and the rest, then continued. Have stars condensed in your Dantian? Bailey Hongzhuang looked inside and realized that the situation was as Ao Lingxiao said. That's right, stars have really condensed. This is the Starlight Realm. The way to determine the cultivation level is very simple. The Starlight Realm is divided into 9 levels. 1 star is Starlight Stage 1. 2 stars is Starlight Stage 2. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest immediately understood. So it seems that I'm now a Star Aurora Rank 1 cultivator. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. I'm in Starlight Stage 2. Bewitching said. Mo Yunjue nodded. I'm the same. From the looks of it, you guys should have increased by 3 levels, Xiren said. This increase doesn't seem to be as great as when you were in the Blood Refining Tower. No, that's not how you judge it. Ao Lingxiao shook his head. Breaking through from the Purple Realm to the Starlight Realm may seem like it's only 1 level of difference, but it's extremely difficult to cross. These 2 levels were completely different realms. If one wanted to go from the 9th level of the Purple Realm to the 1st level of the Astral Realm, one would need a certain amount of luck or a huge amount of help. Otherwise, it would be too difficult to make the leap. On this Penglai Island, many cultivators were stuck at the Purple Realm level 9 and were unable to step into the Astral level 1. It can only be said that the Demon Training Tower's inheritance is truly amazing to actually be able to help you directly cross this barrier. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but feel surprised when they heard Ao Lingxiao's words. They had never thought that it would be so difficult to break through. From the looks of it, we've really gained a huge advantage. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Although she didn't know much about this, she could tell from Ao Lingxiao's serious expression that he was telling the truth. However, after thinking about it carefully, she also felt that Ao Lingxiao's words were very reasonable. The Purple Realm and the Astral Realm were already different. Naturally, They were two completely different realms. Chapter 3804. Hearing Shangwan Yingying's praise, Ao Ling Xiao smiled faintly, but his gaze couldn't help but fall on Di Beichun. He had already made up his mind that as long as Di Beichun could successfully obtain the inheritance, he would tell Di Beichun about it. Thinking of this, Ao Ling Xiao opened his mouth and said, Beichun. However, at this moment, a knock on the door suddenly sounded. Hearing the knock, everyone in the room couldn't help but look at each other, not knowing who would come looking for them at this time. As the door opened, everyone saw the person who came, and a hint of surprise appeared on everyone's faces. Young Master D, Miss Bailey, I really have to congratulate you today. Steward Qin's face was filled with a happy smile, and there was no lack of surprise in the depths of his eyes. Although he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others came to Peng La for the murderous aura field, he never thought that they would actually be able to obtain it. After all, every cultivator who came to the Demon Training Tower wanted to obtain the murderous aura field, but in the end, it was rare to be able to obtain it. However, this time, 3 inheritors suddenly appeared. Even as the steward of the Demon Training Tower, he was extremely surprised. Thank you, Steward Qin. Di Beichun cupped his fists. I didn't expect young Master Mo to be good friends with you. It's rare for the inheritance of the Demon Training Tower to appear, and the moment it appeared, it fell on you guys. It's really amazing. We were just lucky, Mo Yunjue said. Steward Qin waved his hand. If it was anything else, it would be fine, but the inheritance of the Demon Training Tower relies on strength, so there's no possibility of it being fake. Actually, I don't have any other intentions for coming here. I'm just here to congratulate you guys. For so long, the Demon Training Tower hasn't had an inheritor, and many people thought that it was impossible to succeed. Now that you guys have succeeded, it really makes my Demon Training Tower appear in everyone's eyes once again. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had obtained the inheritance, which could be said to be a great benefit, Steward Qin didn't care at all. Such an inheritance could be obtained by those with strength. The reason why it was impossible to obtain, it was undoubtedly because one's strength wasn't strong enough. Actually, with this kind of inheritance, the Demon Training Tower should be the most powerful force on Penglai Island. Unfortunately, the chance of obtaining the inheritance was too small. Many cultivators had already thought that it was impossible. In addition, the atmosphere of the Demon Training Tower was very cruel and bloody. So many cultivators didn't come. Regarding this, he felt extremely helpless. He had always hoped that the Demon Training Tower would be able to flourish. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 had obtained the inheritance one after another, it was tantamount to promoting the Devil Training Pagoda. Since Mo Yunjue had obtained the inheritance, the number of cultivators who came to the Devil Training Pagoda had been increasing. He believed that once the news of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun also receiving the inheritance spread out, there would definitely be more cultivators coming. Therefore, he had a good impression of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. At the same time, he was amazed by their strength. The friends of geniuses were all geniuses. This was completely true. Hearing Steward Qin's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others laughed. Steward Qin, in the end, we still took advantage of this matter. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.